All right, so today we are diving deep into the fascinating world of wartime deception with Operation Mincemeat.
A story that truly captures the imagination.
It really does. I mean, picture this. It's 1943, right in the thick of World War II.
The fate of the free world hanging in the balance.
Exactly. The Allies are planning the invasion of Sicily, but they need to outsmart the Axis powers.
A monumental task, to say the least.
Now, forget about brute force for a moment. This operation hinged on something far more cunning, far more audacious, a corpse.
Now, that's certainly not something you hear every day.
It sounds like something straight out of a spy thriller, right? But this was real. And what makes it even more intriguing is that we're exploring it through this Spanish-language podcast I came across.
Ah, yes. A unique perspective, considering Spain's position during the war neutral, but with a slight tilt towards the Axis.
Precisely. It's like peering through a different lens, gaining a fresh perspective on how this British operation played out on an international stage.
It reminds us that history is rarely one-sided.
Absolutely. And this podcast does a great job of highlighting how Operation Mincemeat wasn't some impromptu act. It was like there were these earlier, almost like precursor events that laid the groundwork.
Like dress rehearsals, in a way. And one that immediately springs to mind is the Battle of Alam Halfa in North Africa back in '42.
Right, where the British, cleverly I might add, used a deceased soldier and a fake minefield map to mislead Rommel.
Oh, a classic case of battlefield ingenuity.
It makes you wonder, did the success embolden them, planting the seed for something even bolder, even more audacious?
And then there's that almost comical incident with the British plane crashing in Spain.
Carrying sensitive documents, no less.
It's like something out of a movie. You'd think the Germans would have been all over that, wouldn't you?
Well, they did manage to get their hands on the documents.
But here's the kicker, they didn't bite.
It's baffling, isn't it? A golden opportunity, seemingly squandered.
It does make you wonder if these incidents taken together made the British think, hold on, maybe there's something to this whole planting, misleading information tactic.
It's remarkable how seemingly unrelated events can converge to shape the course of history. But let's talk about the mastermind behind Operation Mincemeat, Ewan Montague.
Ah, Montague. A fascinating figure, a naval intelligence officer with a flair for the dramatic.
He really was the architect of this grand deception. But where do you even begin to plan something like this? I mean, besides the obvious need for a volunteer.
Not just any volunteer. They needed someone who fit the narrative. They found him, a man who had died from pneumonia, which was crucial for their plan.
Right, because it would explain the water in his lungs later. Grim, but I suppose in the grand scheme. But finding a body was just the first step.
Precisely. They had to create an entire identity for this man, a phantom, Major William Martin. Backstory, personal belongings. They even created a fiancée for him.
Pam, wasn't it? Talk about attention to detail. They even forged love letters between Martin and this imaginary Pam.
It all added to the authenticity. They didn't want him to seem like a fabricated character, but a real person with a life, with connections.
They even included an overdrawn bank statement, so it's little details. But you have to wonder, did they worry about it seeming too obvious, too staged?
Perhaps, but it also makes him relatable, someone who forgets to pay a bill or two, just like the rest of us.
So we have the body, the elaborate backstory, the forged documents, all pointing to this fake invasion of Greece. The question is, how did they ensure that Major Martin and his top-secret cargo ended up in the right hands?
Well, for that, you need a submarine and a carefully chosen location.
Spain, right. Officially neutral, but we've already established they were somewhat sympathetic to the Axis powers.
Precisely, and teaming with German agents. They couldn't just, dump the body anywhere.
This isn't some Hollywood action flick.
Yeah.
They needed a plan that was both audacious and believable.
And that's where Huelva comes in. A coastal city in Spain, the perfect stage for their elaborate ruse.
And that's where the pneumonia comes into play again.
They dressed him in a life jacket, chained the briefcase to his wrist to make it seem like he went overboard, clinging to his precious cargo, and gently placed him in the water.
What a scene that must have been. The weight of what they were doing, the lives that hung in the balance, all resting on this meticulously staged drowning.
The tension must have been incredible. Waiting, watching, hoping the Germans would take the bait.
I can only imagine, right? The fate of the free world hanging by a thread, and they're relying on a staged drowning to pull it off.
It was a gamble, no doubt. But fortune favors the bold, or so they say. And in this case, fortune did smile upon them. The body was discovered almost immediately.
By a local fisherman, right. I seem to recall reading about that.
Not a fisherman, actually. It was a local Abwehr agent. Adolf Kloss, his name was.
Ah, right. The Abwehr German intelligence. So the Germans are onto them already.
Not quite. See, Kloss kept his discovery under wraps. Didn't want to share the potential intel with his Spanish allies just yet.
I see. So it was a bit of a cat-and-mouse game right from the start.
You could say that. Now, the Spanish authorities, following their standard procedures, they contacted the British consulate.
Makes sense. Major Martin was carrying British documents after all.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting. The vice consul in Huelva at the time, a man named F.K. Hazeldine, he had to tread very carefully.
Oh, I bet. Knowing what he knows, or rather what he couldn't let on he knew, it must have been a nerve-wracking situation.
Imagine being in his shoes, having to act surprised, concerned, while secretly hoping the Germans were taking the bait.
Talk about being caught in a web of intrigue. But they couldn't just hope for the best, could they? Did they do anything to nudge things along a bit?
Absolutely. They did something rather clever, actually. They started sending urgent telegrams from the Admiralty in London directly to Hazeldine in Huelva.
Oh. And what did these telegrams say? Anything about a secret mission and a corpse?
Well, they were coded, of course. But here's the genius part. They used a low-level code.
I'm not sure I follow. Why not use their most complex, impossible-to-crack code?
Because they wanted the Germans to read them, or at least to suspect they contain vital information.
Ah, I see. It's like reverse psychology on a global scale.
Precisely. The more the Germans saw the British scrambling to retrieve those documents, the more convinced they became of their importance.
And the less likely they were to suspect a thing. It's brilliant, really.
A masterful blend of cunning and carefully orchestrated chaos.
So the Germans took the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. But did they actually buy the whole Greece invasion story? That's what it all hinged on, right?
That's where the real heroes of this story come in the code breakers at Bletchley Park.
Ah, Bletchley Park. The birthplace of modern code breaking. Those were the unsung heroes of the war, weren't they?
Absolutely. They were instrumental in confirming the success of Operation Mincemeat. They intercepted German communications, decoded them, and, well, let's just say there was no doubt the Germans had swallowed the whole charade.
They were repositioning troops, reinforcing the wrong defenses, all based on fabricated information from a corpse they fished out of the ocean.
It's incredible, isn't it? The sheer audacity of it. And it worked.
A testament to ingenuity, a little bit of luck, and perhaps a healthy dose of British eccentricity.
When Churchill, who was in America at the time, received confirmation, the message was succinct. Mincemeat swallowed whole.
I bet there were some celebratory pints of ale that day.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder, was such a daring, some might even say morally ambiguous operation, what was the cost?
A question that lingers even now, all these years later.
It's easy to get caught up in the strategic brilliance, the audacity. But at the end of the day, a man was exploited, his life, or rather his death, manipulated for a greater purpose.
The ethics of it all aren't so clear-cut.
Exactly. And our Spanish source doesn't shy away from that. They really delve into those moral complexities.
Was it justified? Even in a war against tyranny, was it right to use a man without his consent, without the knowledge of his family? It's a debate that continues to this day.
And rightly so, I think. It forces us to confront those uncomfortable truths about war, about the choices made, the lines crossed, all in the name of victory.
Victory often comes at a price. The question is, was this price too high?
It's a question with no easy answers. But speaking of unanswered questions, we can't overlook one of the biggest mysteries surrounding this whole operation, the real identity of Major William Martin.
Ah, yes. The man who never was, yet played such a pivotal role in shaping history.
For decades, his true identity was a closely guarded secret. It wasn't until the 1990s, with the release of some British files, that a name surfaced. Glendray Michael.
A name that has become synonymous with Operation Mincemeat, forever linked to this extraordinary tale of deception.
And the prevailing theory is that he was a homeless man, his untimely death providing the perfect cover for the operation.
A tragic story, no doubt. But like any good mystery, there are always alternative theories.
Oh, do tell. I'm always up for a good conspiracy.
Well, some believe Martin may have been a sailor lost at sea, his body washing ashore, a stroke of luck for the British.
And convenient for our narrative, right? But our Spanish podcast, they offer up an even more intriguing, albeit unconfirmed, possibility.
They suggest that Major Martin's grave in Huelva, the one visited by countless tourists and history buffs, might be empty.
Empty? Wait, were you implying what I think you are?
Yeah.
That his body was taken.
That's the speculation, that the Germans, ever suspicious, might have exhumed the body, performed their own autopsy, just to be absolutely sure.
That's incredible. It really adds another layer to this whole story.
It seems the true identity of Major William Martin may forever remain a mystery.
And perhaps that's how it should be. A lasting enigma, a reminder of the shadowy world of espionage and the lengths to which nations will go in times of war.
What we do know is this. Operation Mincemeat was a success, a testament to human ingenuity, to the power of deception, and to the sacrifices made in the face of tyranny.
And it's a story that continues to captivate us, to make us question, to make us think about the complexities of war and the moral dilemmas it presents.
It reminds us that history is never black and white, but rather a tapestry of shades of gray, woven together by the choices we make and the stories we tell.
On that note, we'll leave you to ponder the many layers of Operation Mincemeat. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world around us.